right, from Western North Dakota, the men and women in blue are coming back at you, straight off the cuff. We have episode 22 here coming up for everybody. LT, good afternoon to you.
Hey, how are we doing, DC?
Doing great. It's been, I don't know, about 4 weeks, maybe? 5 weeks?
Yeah, a little bit longer. We're finally getting a stride going here and getting a little bit more regular, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, last episode we did a lot of talking on our new team that we had kind of concocted and put together. We didn't have a great name, but we called it our POP team. It was our problem-oriented policing team. And just want to kind of give an update on kind of what our POP team did and kind of some results on it. So, Mike, if you want to jump off and...
Sure, yeah. So, again, we had 2 officers specifically assigned to that, and they got a little bit of specialized training, some specialized contacts with some different levels of state, local, and federal government to be able to kind of start to coordinate some of these different efforts that we're trying to accomplish. And, now we're probably a month and a half, 2 months, maybe a little bit more than that into it, and the team has succeeded in its mission. I mean, they've really accomplished quite a bit. They've done quite a bit of identifying and coordinating with HSI and Border Patrol, ICE and stuff like that. So that project's always obviously ongoing, but for the most part, we've been seeing a market improvement in especially in that small area that we were talking about the last episode.
That problem neighborhood really has seen the benefits of this probably the most.
Exactly.
I would say, but. Yeah, and just one other piece that I don't know that we ever highlighted on this was the Power of 100 Women's Group. Just to kind of tie into this piece this was back in, I want to say, October. I was in front of that group and kind of presented the problem that we had started to notice last year was we had a difficult time communicating with non-English speaking people. Right. And technology has advanced so far, and Google Translate can get you somewhere, but in law enforcement's world, it's your hands are full and it's just a little clunky. Yeah, it's a little clunky. So Lieutenant Lyons and I had actually come across, there was these earbuds that are ran by artificial intelligence and presented in front of this group. They blessed us with $10,000 to be able to equip our patrol officers with them. And all of these AI earbuds are now in the hands of our patrol officers, and they've been utilized, and it's been fantastic. These have been able to help kind of bridge the gap between victims and between suspects of crime and things like that. Just a more efficient way for us to be able to hear what happened or hear what their side of the story is without having to possibly bring in a translator, which isn't always the easiest thing up here. But
exactly, yeah, and it again goes back to the true testament of our community partnership. What we really strive for. So the group, the Power of 100, we're really appreciative for their assistance on this because it was an unbudgeted expense that really kind of came up, but it was a definite need that we needed to try to build that gap for what the guys are experiencing on the street, and it's really been helping out. Exceedingly well. The other side of that too is, so that's on the street side. In about 2 weeks, we're actually doing a demo here for a company that's integrating with our 911 system. So we could potentially have the ability to, as the callers are on the phone, not only would it transcribe, English speaking, it would actually just a speech to text, but it would also translate if it detects a different type of language. So it's all AI powered. So it's incredible. It's almost every month now that something new is coming on the line that's going to make our jobs more efficient, keep the public safer. So it's exciting times coming up in law enforcement. Yeah,
absolutely. And we've got a couple of announcements. We've got some big things upcoming, whether it be the police department or even beyond that. But the first one that's going to be upcoming, we've been doing a lot of advertising on our social media pages, but Heroes Ball is right around the corner.
Yep.
April 5th. Yep, April 5th. This is a huge event. I mean, when you think about between the domestic violence shelter, the fire department, and the police department, this is our huge yearly fundraiser.
Big flagship.
Yeah, this is, so stay on the lookout for that or purchase tables. I think Lieutenant Lyons is our personal contact here in the police department.
Yep. And I'll make sure to put up a graphic or something, maybe a QR code that people can click on and buy tickets online. And
it's always a good time. I mean, if you've never been and you want to interact with some first responders, it's a perfect opportunity. It's a pretty laid back atmosphere. We do some fun, competitive physical fitness challenge games, and it's a good time. Another one, DPA event that we have coming up, this one's always a huge hit in the community, is May 1st through the 3rd. May 1st through the 3rd is our annual Daddy-Daughter Dance. So we're out at the August House again. That August House has been really good to us. Seems like a nice venue to have it. So we're again out there. Then we've got another one. I wanted to mention this last time and got spaced out and didn't. But one thing that we are doing here in Dickinson is we're hosting the annual NDPOA, North Dakota Peace Officers Association.
Good plug. Yep.
We're hosting the annual conference this year. And what comes with that is that brings basically law enforcement officers, whether that be troopers, whether that be BCI agents, parole and probation, sheriff's deputies, police officers from all over the state will be coming here in August. It's a fun conference. Not only are we training and we're doing things, there's an award banquet. We have a fishing competition. We've got a golf tournament. We've got all kinds of things. But we are actively fundraising for this. This is a complete fundraising donation effort. This North Dakota Peace Officers Association. We just look for companies, organizations that want to support state law enforcement is where this is at, to kind of bring forward some great training experiences and having a nice kind of a, the camaraderie that you get in that week is really nice.
Exactly. It's been a while since Dickinson's hosted, so we're excited to be in that position again, to be able to host this side of the state. And I think even since the last ones, even our venues around town have changed a little bit, so it's excited to bring people in and showcase what we have here. And like you mentioned, the training is another big aspect of it, besides the networking that we have with fellow law enforcement from across the state. Have we solidified? Is that an official announcement that we can announce yet?
So I do have all the trainings solidified on this. I would like to. We'll do a plug, and we'll be ready for a plug. Yeah, I'll put together. We're almost live with our website right now, but we do have a nice showcase piece to the training that I think all law enforcement is going to really appreciate, kind of what we're doing and what we're bringing in this year. But we got another piece. We got to meet our newest member of the police department yesterday. Lieutenant Handel and I did. Yep. I think she officially became in, and was it last Thursday or last Friday? She officially.
Yes. Yep. They went and picked her up from the kennel. So originally she was overseas, at a kennel overseas, and they did the company we work with, the vendor we work with, vets the dogs initially overseas, sees viable candidates for canines, and makes the recommendations, and they fly them stateside. And the kennels that we're working with are over in Minnesota. Yeah. So so now that we kind of have the dog selected, we also had the handler selected. And that was through interview process and who's going to be the best match for the next canine role that we have here. This is ultimately going to be replacing Canine Norman, who retired out about a year ago.
Yeah, it was about a year ago.
Yeah, the black lab that we have. So this dog is another Malshep cross.
A Malshep cross. Yep.
And it'll be female, and it's also going to be a single purpose dog this time. So it'll detect narcotics, but I do also believe we're going to cross train for some tracking capabilities. So it has some patrol aspects of a dual purpose, but not the bite characteristics that we usually associate with that type of patrol work.
Yeah. Not disclosing a name, we've got an interesting piece to this that we had announced it last year, but we had a very generous anonymous donor that blessed our canine budget and fund with over $25,000. So we thought, by getting this dog and getting this training off the ground, we thought that it would be a special moment to be able to let them meet for the first time, and then organically our new partner, let her decide what the name is going to be of her. So we'll have a name, and we'll probably, maybe on one of these episodes to come here, we'll probably have to bring the newest officer, the newest canine handler, and we'll do something special here.
Yeah, I always thought part of the criteria needs to be some like the most embarrassing name that you have to yell on the porch at 2 a.m. to get them inside.
And,
I guess we wouldn't do that to you, Dean.
Yeah. So other than that, we've kind of worked through this terrible cold stretch. We're hopefully looking forward to spring, where things are going to get busier for us. Traffic is going to start moving again, and we're going to start feeling the town get a little bit busier. We're kind of expecting that in here in town in Dickinson. With heavy traffic, I guess, is kind of a nice segue to bring in our next guest, who doesn't share the same color uniform as us, but shares a lot of the same responsibilities as us. And today we have a special guest. We have Sergeant, currently, Jenna Clawson-Huibregste, or Huibregste?
Huibregste, yes.
Yeah, there you go. I apologize.
I should have put that in there.
Huibregste. Yes. Coming to us from the Capitol building in Bismarck, but currently is assigned to the North Dakota Highway Patrol as a sergeant, has many different roles and tasks. Before we jump into all of that stuff, why don't you introduce yourself to some of our viewers out here in Dickinson and just kind of give us a little bit of your backstory of who you are and what brought you into law enforcement.
Sure. My name's Jenna, Sergeant with the Highway Patrol. My last name's Clawson-Huibregste. Nobody pronounces it right on the first time, so I should have given you that phonetic spelling. I've been in the Highway Patrol for coming up on 10 years here in May, and I had a sort of unique path into law enforcement. It's not something that I ever thought that I would do. I grew up in Montana on a ranch, and with a sort of split household. My mom's a Canadian citizen and didn't get her citizenship till much later in life. And so I grew up in a family that was honestly a little bit hesitant of law enforcement. I grew up in Pᴏᴅᴄᴅ, so it's a border patrol station town, and my mom always like, we know she was legal, but I don't have my citizenship, so we always just kind of stayed away from uniforms. We joke about it now. And so I grew up in a military family, though, so very strong respect for authority and things of that nature. Getting into college, I studied cultural anthropology. When I tell people that, they're like, wow. Oh, so how do you use your education? Haha. But turns out I have got to use it in a very unique way. I got my master's degree in the same thing and joined the Highway Patrol after that and started our Cultural Liason Officer program, which we might talk a little bit more about later. But I'm kind of your uncharacteristic law enforcement officer, which is kind of what I branded myself as for the last 10 years as well.
So you set us up here, and I got to say, I think when I started in law enforcement, I had this idea of the Highway Patrol, and it maybe still was that way to a certain degree, where all your troopers they seemed the same. They seemed like large statured,
yes,
men that seemed somewhat intimidating, somewhat stern. Not a lot of personality. No. It's not. I'm not throwing any shade at my friends in the Highway Patrol, but that was kind of the piece. I don't think that you could be any further away from any of those things, and It's just like I really do believe the Highway Patrol has really turned the corner, and there's a lot of personality now. Just even the way that you guys carry yourself, it's not in a negative way. Right. You're still demanding that respect, but it's almost I would put it in a way that you guys almost look more like the state of North Dakota citizens than what it had been. Yes,
for sure. So certainly when you think of a state trooper, you think of a guy that's 6'5", wears that hat that comes with that stoic presence as well. But we have turned a corner in that we are trying to make our agency look more like the community that we serve. And since we're a state agency, that includes your city areas, your rural areas, and then also your tribal areas. And some of our cities are very diverse now, as you guys are experiencing here in Dickinson as well. And so we've tried to turn the corner on not only who's represented in the uniform, but also how we interface with the community and have them get to know us. And so when I came into law enforcement 10 years ago, it took 7 months, I think, before I saw another female in uniform in the Highway Patrol. And now, yes, there's still only 7 of us out of 171, our number is now. But we're spread out throughout the state. We make sure when we're hiring candidates that they get to see us in the uniform as well. People want to see themselves in the uniform to feel like they have a future in your agency. And I know that goes for law enforcement across the nation, but certainly in North Dakota by far and large.
Yeah, and our department very similar. We had been through the 70s and 80s. In fact, I think so Sergeant Jackie Martin, she would have been one of the first female law enforcement officers in North Dakota. So Dickinson is a bit of a trendsetter that way.
Yeah,
it kind of leveled out there for a while, but late 2000s, we went up from probably the same percentage that you're at to where we're at now, close to 20.
I would 25%. Say we're almost 20%
That's incredible,
of our staff is our females, and it's you know this better than maybe we would here as two guys in this field, but it's the female officer really brings characteristics and qualities that it's so hard to get out of a male officer, and it's so good to put them on a team, especially like what we strive for here in a municipality where we really solve our big problems with like a team atmosphere. We talk about it in podcasts before. The call for service where officers responded, we had shots being fired, and just trying to figure out how to process everything that's going. Yes, there's a tactical element. Yes, there's a perimeter element, but there's also has to be an element where you have to communicate with somebody. And we have found that man, I don't know that we have better communicators when it comes to scenes like that than our female officers.
Is that finesse?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
We always, when we're talking about women in law enforcement in our agency, we signed on to the 30 by 30 initiative a number of years ago, which essentially is an initiative across the country to get at least 30% of agencies and now 30% of recruit classes made up of women. It's a goal, certainly, and not one we've been able to reach yet, but it's made us change the way that we do things in the way that, are we hiring to groups where women are seeing that we want to hire them? Do they see women in the uniform? And how are we reaching them? Then once they're in the process, are we making sure we connect another female with them? Things like that. And by doing that, we started to recognize more what we already have in our agency, which is women across a variety of specialties. We have canine officers, firearms instructors, extreme communicators like myself in public information roles. And we could really find what that female is coming in the door and who they would connect with best, because just like men, it's not everybody fits the same mold.
Yeah.
And then two, educating the men in our agency that we're not, by signing on to a 30 by 30 initiative, it's not women are better or worse. It's just that we're different and men are different. And then we're all different within our gender as well.
Right.
And how can we have that better team approach by really focusing on what each individual does best and where we operate better. And yes, there are things women certainly excel in more. And usually it's that communication aspect. And boy, does it make a difference if you have the right person communicating, especially in the middle of a crisis. In all of the tribal work that I've done in this agency since the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, most of it I went and did by myself. And as a female, I felt like I was more approachable to a lot of people because when I was by myself, cops hang out in groups. If we're together, we're all in the corner together. And even at a community event, I have to remind people, like, break up and go talk to each other. But being by myself and being female, I think made me more approachable to everybody. But then you start to look at your more vulnerable populations. In any population, that's usually women and children too. And they just seem to be a lot more apt to come up to a female in uniform, I've noticed.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, because we seem to have found something. We don't have the answer to it, and I'm curious to know from your perspective, how do you reach other areas of your populations to try to, your words, not mine, to try to model your agency to look like the public that you're serving? What avenues have you guys found in the Highway Patrol that have been successful in reaching out to these recruits and showing them that law enforcement is not necessarily the field that sometimes it gets portrayed as, so that you can grab these recruits and they can see you in a uniform and they can think, oh, I can do this also. How have you guys found that?
Yeah, definitely. So in the past couple of years, we've changed a lot, starting with putting a designated person in recruiting so they can focus on that full time and really break down what does it look like for who we're reaching, where are people dropping out in the application process, et cetera. But as far as reaching the community, we want to reach our minority populations largely, and then also our females. We have no problem getting males in the door or criminal justice majors. So we still pay attention to those people, but we're making sure we sink resources into all of these other subsets as well. So that looks like, hey, let's get out of just the criminal justice sector, and where are more women getting degrees at? Because when we look across, we're like, hey, name your best 10 troopers. 1 or 2 of them have criminal justice educations. The rest of them are teachers, physical therapists. They went to school for nursing. And so getting into more of those programs in a college setting of, if you can get in front of a nursing class and really talk to them about how what they're doing right now can actually connect with law enforcement. The trick is letting a professor let you come in when they're like, well, we're training them to be nurses, but we're like, hey, guess what? In our profession, we'll see a lot of things that are in common with nursing, to include really traumatic things, car crashes, domestics, homicides, etc. And you're going to be there before any nurses are ever going to be touching that person, and being able to impact people's life in that way. So that's been a really easy way to interface with people that are not criminally justice inclined. And then I do, myself and a lot of other troopers, go out and do some adjunct professor type classes with different universities. So University of Mary, NDSU, and then it gives you the opportunity. I talk about Cultural Liason officer program all day long, a couple classes a year, and that's in front of 100 different students, and none of them are criminal justice majors. And if you can catch their attention in that, they're like, you know what, there's a specialty for me in these roles. We're not all just chasing taillights our whole careers. Very fun, but at some point in time, you need some diversity, right? And so they start to see that. And then when we get into those minority populations, I'm really trying to make sure, especially with the tribes, since we have overlapping jurisdiction with them, we spend so much time going to community events. It's now rare to be at a powwow and not see a trooper there. But prior to us starting that Cultural Liaison Officer program and really making those relationships and trust relationships with tribes, you would not really find a trooper at a powwow. Maybe once in a while if we had a direct invitation for an honoring first responders powwow or something of that nature. Now if we're not there, it's strange. And people who are at powwows are like, hey, where were you guys at this time? And so I call myself the Where's Waldo of the Highway Patrol. If there's a tribal event, I'm there, or somebody that works in the agency is there. And at first that was just me going out and doing that, but you have to have buy-in from your whole agency, as you guys know. And so it was getting your unconventional leaders in those different areas of the state involved, who are your troopers that are already connected with those communities, and getting them to come with me to powwows and getting into schools and doing safety talks and things like that. And that allowed people to see themselves in the uniform. And we started to see the diversity, especially ethnically, in our agency really boom in the last couple of years because of it. And in our youth academy as well. That's where we get probably like a 50-50 split on women and men. I call them women and men, but they are girls and boys, teenagers. They don't like to be called that. But we see 50-50. It's boys and girls in our youth academy. And then when you look at minority populations, highly, highly represented in that ages 16 to 19, which is so promising for the future of law enforcement in North Dakota because they're from across the whole state.
Yeah.
And plug that a little bit more, the dates for that?
Sure. So the Youth Academy is this July the 28th through the 31st, and that's ages 16 to 19. You have to have a learner's permit or driver's license because we're going to have you drive squad cars, make fake traffic stops, but they will be your real ones on a fake controlled setting. You get to shoot guns, learn how to handcuff people, run canines, see drones, and it's completely free. So it's in Bismarck at the Law Enforcement Training Academy, and you come there, stay there, learn everything you can about law enforcement, instructors from all over the state, and then you will have a friend group for the rest of your life.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, props to you guys for that. That's a brilliant idea. And what we've been seeing locally here too is kind of investing kind of in our own backyard and with our career technical education center here, trying to get these, the younger we can get them spun up and start thinking about a career path in this and what we can do. So props to you guys for coming up with this program. It's a really good idea.
Yeah, no, I thought I loved a lot what you said right there. I love the piece where really it goes back to humanizing the badge is kind of what you guys have been doing, how you've been modeling your recruitment efforts and taking it beyond that. And we've stole some of those ideas. Good. And I'm going to steal more of what you just said there. You know, like we do adjunct
social media stuff.
we do some adjunct professing at our college, and that's brought us so much fruit. I mean, you think about how many officers here had been a part of the criminal justice classes that we've helped teach. We bring them in and we do our ride-along programs, we bring them, officers want to be a part of it. And as soon as they kind of feel the family piece of it, they really jump in board. But what you brought up on the Youth Academy, how you said that you have a really 50-50 split between boys and girls in that, I guess that's when I go in and I teach in the CTE program, which would be our high school level program. We teach, so here at our CTE, Southwest CTE Center, law enforcement, we teach 2 classes that is dual credited, so they're getting criminal justice credits and high school credits.
Fantastic.
It's been great. It's not even, everybody in that class is not necessarily wanting to be a police officer or a trooper or something like that. They're just trying to learn. They're trying to see behind the badge, but we're seeing the 50-50 split. So whatever we're doing here in North Dakota, we really are reaching past like your typical people. And I think the other spot, years ago, we started seeing applicants come through. I think of one of them that came through and had like an accounting degree or something like that. And you just have these abilities. We know this. As being a trooper, somebody can come to the police academy. You can teach somebody how to make traffic stops, how to keep themselves safe, how to shoot straight. Those are very teachable qualities.
Yes.
The hardest thing to teach somebody, having empathy and having the ability to just communicate with somebody and not make it feel so forced. That is so hard to give to somebody.
Yes.
And, so I just really do think that what we're doing here in North Dakota just seems to be different, possibly.
Yes,
and we're seeing the fruits of that. But
we always tell people at career fairs when they say, well, I'm not criminal justice, like, we're looking for good human beings first. We'll teach you the rest. And I always tell them it's much easier for us to teach you how to shoot a gun than someone who's been doing it their whole life most of the time. So don't be frightened by
exactly
that.
Right.
And people are usually frightened by, you know, our fitness testing coming in the door. Am I going to pass it? We now tell people, like, hey, do you want to take a practice spin on this? We'll give you an orientation of sorts on that fitness test coming in the door before you ever need to go test. It used to be just this like blind survival of the fittest, go in and see if you can make the cut. Well, let's find those good people and then train them up into that. You're so right.
I love that. And Lieutenant Handel and I have been working on a project here with our in-house PT test. And I think it was somebody else that had to tell it to us in like plain English, but they're like, well, why do you have a pass and fail? You don't have a pass and fail for anything else, I guess, like coming in police standard wise. Why don't you just give them some training, give them some help? And it was just like, oh, I don't know why we didn't do that, but
exactly.
we will now.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Let's go and talk about training. So we do train together. Obviously, the Highway Patrol and police officers, sheriff's deputies, they train together. But the Highway Patrol is a little bit different. You guys have more specialty trainings. You guys have a longer academy. Kind of talk to our listeners who maybe don't know that. Maybe they don't even understand what an academy looks like for a trooper.
Sure. So your standard training for law enforcement in the state is that basic academy, 12 weeks long. Everybody goes through that to be a law enforcement officer in North Dakota. With the state patrol, we go to the academy for about 6 months. And so that extra training looks like 40 more hours of medical training, truck training, we call it, but your commercial motor vehicles that are moving on the highways, we do a significant amount of training in that, and then way more driving training, because we are primarily out in rural settings on the interstates driving really high speeds. And so we get our troopers out onto high-speed driving tracks. They're driving upwards of 130 miles an hour and learning how to control a vehicle because nobody trains to do that, and no one comes in the door saying, yeah, I drive 130 miles an hour all the time. Some people never have driven that fast, hopefully. And so we will take them and do an extreme amount of training in typically those 3 areas, and then just continue to run people through more scenarios and more instances on here's how you need to handle yourself when you're alone. Troopers typically don't have backup when we are out in these rural settings. We work heavily with other agencies. Very rarely is another trooper our backup, which is kind of crazy to think about. When you work in a city setting or a county setting, you kind of know where your next person's at, and you're confined to a jurisdiction unless you're helping another agency. With us, we're primarily an assisting agency. So if the Dickinson Police Department has a big incident going on, troopers can flood the area from everywhere, but it seems like, is there one around and suddenly there's 10? We are we are everywhere, but we're very rarely beside each other. So we so heavily depend on other agencies to also help us out, and stress those relationships with our new troopers when they come out of the academy, and let them know police departments and sheriff's offices are your backup. So make sure that you're,
And we rely heavily, especially in the realm of crash reconstruction. That's their Highway Patrol's always a go-to. So if we have a very serious injury that could potentially go fatal, technically, local municipalities can investigate those and stuff. But can you kind of maybe highlight some of the training that you guys receive to do crash reconstructions?
Yes, absolutely. So all of our troopers are trained in crash investigation and then advanced crash investigation. So any trooper that's working out there after about 3 years, they've been through advanced crash investigation. And then beyond that, we have a couple troopers that are your extreme experts that come in with that heavy math background or are heavy math inclined. And there's about 4 of them that operate that way. And the rest of us are so thankful they exist, because that much math is wild. But it used to be that we would respond to every single fatality, serious injury, crash, still do, but we would sit out there with a total station, and it would take 10 hours to map a crash scene. Now, with technology, thank goodness, our crash reconstructionists can throw up a drone and they can map that scene in sometimes as little as 10 minutes.
That's cool.
Stand in the ditch instead of on the roadway, which is incredibly dangerous. And they've just come so far. And those crash reconstructionists are full-time. They are sworn troopers. They've worked the road for a long time. They understand that background, but they are called into courtrooms all the time, because those are significant crashes with significant charges, usually in those drunk driving crashes where somebody died or there was some sort of negligence involved. Yeah. And they are very, very good at what they do. And we're thankful to be an assisting agency in that sense too, because we have the capability to send people to that specialized training and the staff too, having 171 troopers to put people in those roles full time.
How about some other specialty roles that the troopers are kind of known for statewide? And
Sure. So we have an aircraft that the state depends on heavily. So when we have, say, a missing person or somebody that fled on a pursuit or something like that, we have an aircraft that's available all the time for any agency to call, and then a really robust bloodhound program as well. So those two kind of go hand in hand, especially if somebody is gone on foot or missing. And so we have multiple bloodhounds throughout the state who can respond at a moment's notice to help find somebody. Then our narcotics team as well. We have a criminal interdiction team that is new in the last couple of years, and that comprises of 8 different troopers, 2 sergeants. Now we're hopefully filling a Western sergeant spot soon over here.
Cool.
And so they primarily focus just mostly on that drug trafficking, human trafficking, criminal behavior, and they do that full time. And boy, are they!
I gotta say, they've been fantastic so far. I mean,
great.
Our people see it. Our people have worked with them, and that team really has been. I think your guys' administration would say this is exactly what they were hoping it could be.
Yes,
it has been.
Awesome. That's great to hear. The evidence lockers got full really fast, and turns out when you have people can dedicate their time just to that, we know how much is moving through the state of North Dakota. It's a very safe place to live, but there is much more, of course, going on here than we realize. And for too long, North Dakota was kind of a safe haven state to run drugs through and things of that nature. And now there's a lot more people on the road and in the pavement in the trooper uniform stopping that criminal behavior. And it's great to see the impact already.
Yeah. No, a lot of what you talk about, whether it be the plane or whether it be the bloodhounds, it's just the Highway Patrol really fills the gap. We're such a large state with not a lot of law enforcement officers, and you guys do such a good job at focusing on how do we maximize our reach with our resources. And let's go back, though, and talk about something. You've hit it a couple of times, and I don't know a lot about it, and I'm guessing our viewers know even less about it, but you were the very first Cultural Liaison Officer. Can you talk about why that started and talk about that position a little bit?
Sure. So I sort of had a pipe dream when I was in college because of my upbringing in Montana. I grew up really close to the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. Most of my friends were from there. I went with my mom on multiple powwow circuits where we sold food. That was my upbringing in the summer times. And when I went to college, I realized that I started to want to get into this kind of field. I really was looking at the military side since that's my family history, but quickly realized right here at home, we could use some of the same work, which was this cultural liaison interface with law enforcement. I lived in Fargo at the time and went to school and saw how diverse the city was. Fargo Police Department, I have to give them credit for having a cultural liaison officer program. I went and did some ride-alongs and started working heavily with them and seeing what they were doing. And they had a dedicated face that could go out and talk to these communities that were moving into the area. A lot of these people were being resettled there and from different countries where you don't trust law enforcement. Law enforcement and the government is not somebody that go to seek out for help, or if they were to stop you on the side of the road, they're terrified, a lot of them, because they didn't know if they were going to be in their country held up for money, bribed, things like that. And so Fargo Police Department had a dedicated person to go out and work with those communities. And I sort of had this aha moment in grad school where I was like, okay, I don't think I want to go overseas and do this work in a military setting. North Dakota needs this. I started calling around and I talked to the most convincing guy in the Highway Patrol, Sergeant Tim Coughlin. And he said, hey, we're testing in Fargo tomorrow. Just go test and see how you do. And I joked that I woke up and I was graduating the academy and I'm like, they're going to give me a gun and a car and a badge and I'm going to go do this thing. Yeah. Turns out it was the best decision I ever made. I love being a trooper and a cop. It is really a thrill. Every day is different and you don't know what you're going to get into. I've never had a day where I'm like, oh, darn it, I have to go to work. Like, I mostly I get paid to do this. This is amazing. And so within my first full year of law enforcement was the Dakota Access Pipeline protest. And I was still getting my feet wet as a cop, but lived in New Salem. I was the New Salem trooper at the time, so was at that protest nearly every single day. My husband was there in the National Guard setting. Luckily, we had no kids yet, so we were free as a bird to work all the time. But we didn't have a cultural liaison officer program, but I was viewing that thinking, okay, I have friends that are protesting. I have friends that are cops. I see this from the eyes of a human being, a cop, an anthropologist, all these things. And so on a whim, I wrote a letter to my colonel. We have an online suggestion box where you can just say whatever you want to the colonel, and you can put your name on the bottom of it or not. I wrote up a program proposal, put my name on the bottom, and sent it in. And Colonel Mike Gerhardt at the time called me a couple days later, and I was thinking I'm going to lose my job, or he's going to tell me to come in and talk. And he said, "Hey, I got what you sent in, and I'd like to talk about it. Can you come in a couple of days?" Well, the waiting period is the worst time by far. And he, luckily, I knew he's a forward thinker, progressive. He's like, this is what we need. And essentially, I just said, we need to have relationships with tribes. We have needs, they have needs, and they'll likely overlap quite a bit. Yeah. And so he said, go ahead and do it on a part-time basis. So I was working the road, arresting people, and then I'd run and go to the tribes. Within a few days of the pipeline protest, I was down in Standing Rock, just seeing if they'd be willing to talk to me. And turns out they welcomed me with open arms because all the protesters were gone. People that protested in North Dakota, yes, still here, but they're like, okay, we are the ones who have to deal with this now that the protest is over.
Exactly.
And Standing Rock welcomed me with open arms to have that conversation. And so, like I said, I'm the Where's Waldo of the Highway Patrol. I just kept showing up, and they kept welcoming me. And within a few months of that, the chairman of Standing Rock at the time, Mike Faith, at a huge conference, 300 people, all the tribes said, this is what trust looks like, and we're starting to build this relationship with the Highway Patrol, gifted me a star quilt, and really I can credit him with a ton of saying, like, I'm starting to trust this gal over here, and let's give this a whirl. Standing Rock can do this with the Highway Patrol, and everybody else can too. And so I started having meetings with tribal councils and not telling them, here's what our program looks like, and this is what we're going to do. I said, like, this program's wide open. What do you need from the Highway Patrol, and how can we make it work with what we maybe also need? And turns out we had the same concerns: drug trafficking, human trafficking. How do we keep our youth safe? All the tribes will tell you we don't have enough law enforcement here. They're usually staffed around 40%. When someone calls 911, why are they asking if you're an enrolled member or not? Things like that. And we're like, we have so much to talk about. And these are all the same needs that we have too. So let's get talking. And so again, it was community event after community event, get in the schools. And then we've now since signed 2 jurisdiction agreements, one with MHA Nation and then one with Spirit Lake, and are working on drafts with other tribes so that the Highway Patrol can go there and provide mutual aid law enforcement services with them. And no longer does dispatch have to answer the phone and ask, are you an enrolled member or not? And the reason that question was asked is just so the right services could go. The person with the right jurisdiction could go. And so it's alleviated a lot of that. We still have a lot of work to do. And it's not we showed up, got this accomplished, and we'll see you once a year. We have a relationship every single day and a lot going on with them. There's a huge influx of missing and murdered Indigenous people in North Dakota and across the country. And so we work really heavily with them on that. I'm the alerts coordinator for the state. So a lot of missing persons cases and calls come in through state radio and then to the Highway Patrol and BCI. And oftentimes we can help people with those missing persons cases, either through an alert setting or helping them launch a more thorough missing persons investigation, because we have so many resources we can offer.
Yeah, so and we're not talking about just, I know some people have been woken up in the middle of the night by a silver alert, or mostly probably have been.
Yes.
But we're talking about amber alerts, which could be, can you describe what a difference between an amber alert, a blue alert, and a silver alert for anybody that might not know what those are?
Absolutely. So we have 3 alert types in the state right now. Your amber alert is one most people know about. That's if a child is abducted and they're in serious bodily harm or death. And so we want people, the system was made for Amber Alerts. We want people to always know when an Amber Alert goes out. However, it's not used very often, thank goodness. What it's used for the most is that Silver Alert, which is what most people do know about. We try to stay cognizant about when we send them out, but we live in North Dakota, so when it's negative 40 out and someone goes missing, we call it the big red button. It sits on my desk at home or at the office, and we will push it at 3 a.m. if somebody is missing, because we want them to be found. If it's the middle of summer, we know that person has a full tank of gas, we will maybe wait till 7, 8 a.m. when everyone's on the road. But that Silver Alert is for your elderly elderly over 65 who also have a physical or mental impairment that they cannot live alone or be without the help of others, or somebody who has a disability who is above the age of 18. So it also covers people who maybe tend to wander, Down syndrome, autism, etc. It will also cover those folks. And then your blue alert is for law enforcement. If someone tries to seriously injure, kill us, and then gets away, then we can send out a blue alert with their information. It's only been used once in North Dakota, thank goodness, and it was a successful return. So our return rate on alerts is very, very high. Yeah. We basically find everybody we put an alert out for, and when we say no to an alert and they don't meet criteria, we probably work even harder because those resources are all there, and we don't just turn people away. We make sure that we still help them find loved ones. This legislative session, there's another alert being proposed by a couple of lawmakers, and we're working heavily with them, called the Feather Alert, and that is directed toward Indigenous people. And so we have to work through criteria, and there's, as legislative session goes, a lot of testimony and debate that goes into all of those, but it's really heavily looking at the Native American population. They go missing and are murdered at a rate 10 times higher than any other ethnicity across the country and in North Dakota. So we're trying to help them zero in and figure out if the alert system could be a benefit.
Yeah, and you recently were in front of legislature.
Yes.
Helping, I guess, lawmakers understand what that feather alert could look like.
Right.
Not your first time
no.
in front of the legislature.
Yes.
But describe what that experience is like, I guess, as a law enforcement officer.
Sure.
Not a lot of us, I guess, in this career field get in front of lawmakers and help. But what is that experience like?
Yeah, sure. So I started testifying in front of lawmakers in 2019 to get these mutual aid agreements signed with tribes. And that was my first exposure. I was a trooper then and terrified. But fortunately, there's so many good people out there that'll help you learn how to do it. And a lot of lawmakers are so understanding. You stumble your first couple of times. Now I'm kind of a seasoned pro, but there is so much that impacts law enforcement every legislative session and impacts every citizen in North Dakota. And they've made it so accessible for people. You can tune in virtually. You can testify virtually, you can listen in virtually and know exactly what's going on all the time. So highly encourage everyone to do that. But this year has been very busy, and so the testifying in front of them is now comfortable, but used to not be. But there's so much opportunity to make an impact, and law enforcement right now is following like 236 bills, I think, that will impact the way that we do our jobs, if they pass or if they fail. And fortunately, at the end of all that, just so listeners know too, law enforcement gets a very thorough review of any law changes that impact us or impact citizens at the end of legislative session. And so important to follow along. We have a website that Cindy Solberg keeps for us that shows what the Highway Patrol's tracking, what our testimony is. Anybody can log into that at any time and see what we're up to.
Yeah, I know. I just, just a difference, but in our opinion, or not in our opinion, our perspective, every Friday we're doing a Chiefs of Police legislative update, and we're just tracking the same thing as that's what the Highway Patrol is doing.
Yep.
Because these affect our day-to-day business. They affect funding. They affect just how something could be decriminalized, or how something could be criminalized, or how a new code can be brought in. So I think it's really important, and I think it's. I don't know that as a law enforcement officer, when I was a 4-year officer that I would feel comfortable to jump in front of lawmakers. So that's an excellent quality to have, I guess.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I really have enjoyed it, but used to be terrified of public speaking, and now I seek it out.
And now you're the PIO.
I know. I absolutely love it. Any opportunity to get to talk about what law enforcement is doing and make us a little bit more available to the public to understand what we have going on is a really good opportunity. So
Cultural Liaison Officer. Mikey just said it. You're also the public information officer.
Yes.
Spent some time being a trooper. What have you not done so far at the Highway Patrol? Might be a shorter list, but what,
no kidding.
What else? What other hats are you wearing?
So, I started as a trooper in New Salem and then took over and started our Cultural Liaison Officer program. I've worked in Dignitary Protection and then transferred into our planning officer spot when I got promoted to sergeant. So, really got to see how the agency works, a ton of project management and budgets, etc. And now I'll be promoting to lieutenant and overseeing our Dignitary Protection program, Capitol Security, our crash assistance program we started recently. I'll be overseeing that as well. So when people get into crashes, it used to be that our troopers would keep up with those families and try and let them know what's going on. Well, that's a really heavy ask when that trooper is trying to do a thorough investigation and maybe has since had 2 or 3 fatal crashes they're covering since. We have 2 dedicated non-sworn employees now, Bob and Brenda, that reach out to those families and work with them from the minute it starts to years later even. Yeah. And that's anything from where is my loved one at now that they're deceased? Where did they get taken to? Funeral arrangements with chaplains, insurance. I mean, they will connect them to anything. And this is people across the world, because we have people come here to work from other countries and they are in contact with them all the time. So really fortunate to get to have that team come under my umbrella and get to learn more about what they do and help people learn about them too. It's really incredible. I've done a little bit of everything, but I just am really thankful for the opportunity to get what I've been able to do in the Highway Patrol. In law enforcement, people are not just chasing taillights. There's such a variety people can do if they come into this job. If people go on our social media, they'll see my face on there too, because me and Cindy Solberg run our social media pages as well. So anything from live ride-alongs to, what is the weather like? Those are our most popular videos. People want to see the snow flying and see a trooper in ski goggles.
Yeah. Now, you did mention dignitary protection. That piqued my interest a little bit here too. I know you guys have done it for a while, but can you kind of explain what do the troopers do in terms of that?
Sure. So we have a dignitary protection team that oversees the security of the governor, and then when legislature is in session, the House and the Senate, it's the security of them as well, and then really any other state entity that's in charge of cabinet agencies, et cetera, is assigned out to us, but our main one is definitely the governor's office and then the governor's family by century code. And so we have a dedicated team of troopers that does that full time. I did that on a part-time capacity, and then we'll oversee that team here in the next couple of weeks. But it's really eye-opening to see how much happens in state government and how busy our governors are. North Dakota is an energy hub. We're an outdoors hub. People want to come here for tourism, believe it or not. We're the last capital to be visited in the capital passport book, by the way. But when people come here, they come here in the summer, thank goodness. They get their passport capital book stamped, and every single time they say, I can't believe how great North Dakota is. Yeah. They're shocked by it. They say the people are so nice. Your guys' accents are exactly what we pictured, and they love that. But people are just shocked. They love North Dakota, but our governor is very busy. Being part of that team, though, it really exposes you to some cool things. You get to see sitting presidents and vice presidents and cabinet heads on the federal level, and it's pretty neat. A lane that you don't think really exists, and once you get to operate in it a little bit, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I didn't know it existed when I started in law enforcement, and it was just within the past probably 6 months I was chatting with one of the troopers that currently sits in the dignitary program, and he talked about the amount of travel. This is on the back end of Governor Burgum's time, where he's still even in the presidential race, and just that's still their job. I mean, you're following around your governor who is trying to become the president of the United States. And I just think about, like, we don't think of that here in North Dakota. You don't think about there's troopers right now that are all over the country that are watching after it. So it's just a very cool piece that I don't think a lot of listeners probably
more
know.
than just writing tickets. Go figure.
Right, exactly. More than just tickets and seatbelts. I have one day that sticks out in my brain is when Vice President Pence came to visit North Dakota, and he came to Grand Forks, and they came to interface with many military members in Grand Forks, but then they always try to hit up a bunch of variety of things, and one was a bee farm. North Dakota produces the most amount of honey in the country. If people didn't know, kind of cool. So they did a quick tour of a bee farm, but we went out there, took the vice president and his wife back, and we were sitting underneath the wing of his plane, and the First Lady of North Dakota at the time, she's like, did you ever think you'd be sitting under the wing of this plane? And it was just a surreal moment, and I was one small cog in the wheel of this whole operation when the Secret Service is around, but very neat, and just a day that's burned into my brain, because never did I ever think that, being a little ranch girl from Montana.
We're kind of envisioning, we got the Teddy Roosevelt Library coming up here, the opening there, and we're always speculating who
that's going to be a big
dignitary
event.
would be visiting for us.
We'll be tapping on the Dickinson Police Department.
Yep, you got to remember this interview when you come into
Deal.
No, so the dignitary one is a very cool piece, but I don't want to glaze over. You brought something up and we didn't address it yet, which was you've been recently promoted.
Yes.
I've been tracking because we've been sending our staff, we've been sending administrators, and we've also been sending some of our female officers to the Women in Law Enforcement annual summit or annual conference that's been going on. Specifically, there was one piece in there, I guess, when you became a guest on our podcast here, when I was looking at it, and I was like, well, this is the perfect piece to talk about it, and it's breaking the brass and how women do that. And literally, here you are sitting in front of us as a newly promoted lieutenant in the Highway Patrol, about to be newly promoted. So what advice do you have, I guess, for other female officers in law enforcement and just how to do that, kind of a prequel or pre-taste to what this class can be?
Sure. So in the Highway Patrol, we've had one other woman promote past the lieutenant rank. So it's a huge honor to be able to kind of lay some more payment for that in our agency. And really what I can tell other women is be advocates for each other, not only because we're such a small group that it's really, women have this tendency to kind of pile in on each other, especially when we work with a bunch of men. Be advocates for each other, but then also find who your male peers are. It's very intimidating, when you go into law enforcement, go out to a shooting range and you're one woman and there's 30 guys and you're all about to shoot a bunch of rifles. But take that leap. Every single person there is welcoming you with open arms, even if they aren't saying it on their face. It is a welcoming environment to be in, but that intimidation factor and that measuring stick is really just whatever mostly you're putting on yourself. And I've always told other women in law enforcement that find who your allies are in law enforcement, especially the men, and let them know that you appreciate them being advocates for you and an ally for you, because typically that means that they'll speak up even more for you, maybe in a room that you're not in then. Because it's very easy to, especially as a trooper, go out and work by yourself and you don't have to see anybody for a week besides the people that you're stopping. But put yourself in rooms, put yourself at decision tables and say yes to things. If an opportunity comes open, take it. If you're feeling underconfident about going to do something that maybe will be the only female there for, call somebody and ask them for a pep talk. Really, if you ask for help, almost everybody is willing to give it. And I always tell people too, yes, there's like this third of people that are cheering for you, a third that could really care less, and maybe a third or less that are like, that competitive, I don't really want that person to do as well. I can focus on the 2/3 and just ask for help. People are typically willing to give it. And I can just sing praises about the people in my agency who've done that for me. Is I just tell them, it's weird because I like to have direct conversations, but tell people like, hey, I appreciate the fact that you stood up for me or said I would be good at this. And sometimes that's the only confidence boost that people need. And then I've heavily relied on our civilian staff as well to be a support system for us. Most of our civilian staff are women, and they've been there and done that in their own lives in a different capacities as well. So just find your allies and lean on them.
Yeah, no, I love that. We have talks in here inside of our agency, and a lot of what you say, it's typical treating humans with dignity. And one thing that law enforcement, we have a tendency to do is it's a little bit of a dog eat dog.
Yes,
we pile on each other. When you talk about the pile on thing, we're not immune from that. We tend to point each other's mistakes out instead of almost like praising, like, Jenna, look what you just did, and those types of things. So I think that's incredible advice, but finding your allies and just really leaning in. There was a quote that I had recently seen where it was, why are you accepting criticism from somebody that you wouldn't go and ask for advice for?
It's
and
so
I think
true.
that's something that's so good, like as far as like what you're talking about, is really don't focus on some of that naysay or some of that negative, but really kind of law enforcement has a time, we don't hear a lot of good. A lot of times we're going and we're getting the bad portions of things, and then we as a career field have a tough time sometimes telling each other, LT, you did a great job on that project. Things like that. They don't come very naturally to us. So that was excellent advice, I think, for obviously women, but for anybody, really.
Yeah, definitely. And the other piece is, too, for women, I tell them, when I started, it was so common. I just want to be one of the guys and just be treated like everybody else. And I finally started telling people, except for you're not a guy. And that's totally fine. Like I said earlier, not better, not worse, just different. And that is a good thing. We're all different amongst the women and amongst the men. And so let's all put the pieces of that puzzle together, and then you have yourself a really strong foundation instead of being treated like just one of the guys. So I try to tell women that, and I think it's started to hit home a little bit more. And we've really built up a culture of supporting each other a lot more than when I started. We kind of just operated in our own little corners of the state. Maybe got together once a year if we saw each other at training or something like that. But that support system is huge.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the Highway Patrol changing to kind of, this ties into two things. We got the Women's Summit, but there's somebody.
The date May
4th through the 6th.
4th through the 6th.
Yes.
There you go. Fargo.
Cinco de Mayo in Fargo. Yes. Yep. So we have over 200 people registered right now from multiple states. I think we're getting some people from Canada coming.
Nice.
It's bigger than the last one, so we are anticipating a pretty big event. We want women in any rank to attend, and then men who supervise women. So last time we had about 30 men attend, and we made sure that they sat at different tables. So Cindy and I did assigned seating on the first day.
Oh, well played.
Because just like cops, then you get...
They'll congregate together.
Yes, they congregate in the same table. And so the first day was assigned seating, second day sit wherever you want. And after the first day, the men who are all, chiefs of police and heads of agencies were like, good move. But also, we've never been the minority in a room before. Like, this was pretty eye-opening. Yeah. And they said that they just loved it. It took a little bit of discomfort on that first hour, and then they were like, this is great. They loved it. But they've all said sincerely, I think, that it was such a learning experience to be a minority in law enforcement in a room, and they never thought they would have that experience. So it was good. But we encourage, men to come as well.
Speaking of men that'll be there.
Yes.
We have a new colonel.
Yes,
we got a new colonel, and I think he's also giving the opening remarks at this exact summit.
Yes.
So Colonel Daniel Haugen.
Yep.
He's near and dear to both Lieutenant and I. We were both patrol at the time when, at the time, it was Sergeant Haugen.
Yep.
Yes.
Sergeant Haugen spent time out in Dickinson here, so we luckily have a little bit of pull with Colonel still, and he was actually out here. Would have been about 2 years ago, I want to say. He was out here and even helped with the promotional panel in my position. So
fantastic.
I keep in touch with him, and I have a lot of respect for Colonel Haugen. So I think he's doing great things. But you have another person who's going to be speaking also at that, and that's Sergeant Quinn, who's also in our area, and she's got a special topic. Do you want to highlight that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sergeant Quinn is a field sergeant here in the Southwest region, and she's going to be talking about street survival for women. So she is one of our use of force instructors, firearms instructor, and she has spoken at a variety of conferences, and will say too that before she took on those roles, she was having what we always talk about as imposter syndrome. Like, am I cut out for this? Do I have the qualifications? And she called me and we had a long conversation about it. And I said, guess what? You're probably more qualified than most of the people putting in for it. You just have to get over yourself, basically. We're very frank with each other. And she put in for it and she got it, of course, because I knew she was qualified. She knew she was. And she has done fantastic. So she not only, of course, trains every trooper in the region when we have use of force training days, but specializes on that. Okay, you're female or you have a smaller body type. How are you going to defend yourself physically? Also that verbal judo. How are you going to talk people down? That's one of the things women are usually very great at, is talking to people. I've arrested some really big bad guys that I can just talk straight into handcuffs and they're talking to me like I'm their mom on the way to jail, right? And then other ones who, of course, don't want to go as peacefully, but typically women have that gift of communication. So she combines that use of force piece, that firearms piece, the confidence piece, and then that verbal judo piece all into one class for people to kind of build their confidence up and also give them a ton of resources on where to go next, or to get her and other instructors who she started to bring under her umbrella to come out and get that more specialized training, get on the mats, etc. So they'll learn a ton from her and then also learn how they can get her to come back maybe to their own agencies and spread out some wrestling mats and really get down into the nitty-gritty. So
yeah, that's excellent. I just think that, on all the topics we covered, we covered women that go into law enforcement that want to branch out and start something new with the cultural liaison. And we talk about Sergeant Quinn, who it's like, having that fear in the male-dominated world, but it's just like we see in our own agency, it's just like our female officers, they're not something different. You know what I mean? We don't ever look at them as something different. They're literally just our partners. I don't think it's ever been that. And I think the Highway Patrol has something special in what they have going on from them. Final question I've got for you.
Yeah.
So we've done some recruiting. on this. And I think a lot of people are going to see this and they're going to probably have a piece like, oh, maybe this could be for me. What would be a piece of advice you would have for somebody? If you were to give one piece of advice for somebody thinking about getting into law enforcement, male or female, what would the piece of advice be?
So I always tell people to diversify their portfolio. When you look at what am I going to get trained in, what am I going to go for education, criminal justice is great. I talked about it earlier, but we want those well-rounded people. So get yourself educated and trained in things that are not necessarily what you think of when you think of law enforcement. So take a communications course, public speaking course. All of those things will help you be a better officer and be the person we're really looking for in the applicant pool right now, is just be that more well-rounded person who has a little bit more diversity in their background as far as what you've been exposed to or what your life experiences are. We're looking for those people because that's who the community expects in us in uniform now as well.
Yeah, that's good. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been great. I
got two more questions. I put my kid hat on, and so if it's one of my sons maybe coming up to a trooper on the street, I know the question they would probably ask is first one, what's the biggest speeding ticket you've ever written?
Yes, 146 miles an hour.
Oh, like on the eye?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty epic.
Yes.
That is pretty epic.
With a kid in no car seat.
Oh, that's not epic.
That's not epic.
No, boy. That's not.
But the speed was epic, yes.
Yeah, and then the highest BAC DUI you've ever had?
2.4.
2.4,
I know.
Okay.
That's very weak.
That is very weak, thank you. I know. I've seen a 4.1. It was not mine, it was my shift partner's. Yeah, incredible.
We can patch this. Mikey's really good at patching it. We can just say the 4.1 was yours, and you can apologize.
Yeah.
You can apologize.
The thing is, I know, it's like I got pulled off the road around that 4-year mark to go do all this administrative work. So I'm like, patch in the 4.1
there you
for
go.
me. Thanks.
We'll do you solid.
There you go.
Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. So speak up. So we got this last little round here we like to do. It's called Speak Up, and it's a goofy thing we came up with. It's just a mix of trivia and maybe a little personal stuff. So we got 30 seconds. What it's going to be, I'm just going to pepper up. Matt's going to pepper off a couple questions here. If you need to pass, just hit pass. There's really no score, but just
get nervous because this is a high tense.
Oh no!
All right, here we go.
Your favorite vacation destination?
Ooh, Galapagos Islands.
A Crown Vic or an Interceptor?
Crown Vic all day.
Best cop movie of all time?
Super Troopers, obviously.
What is the name of the traffic crash reporting system used in North Dakota?
Tracks.
Who wrote the Western song Highway Patrol back in 1993?
I can sing it.
We'll take it.
There's a Highway Patrol.
There you go. The North Dakota Highway Patrol logo depicts what honorable Teton Sioux police officer?
Marcellus Red Tomahawk.
There we go.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Jenna, congratulations on your promotion, and
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Yes.
This has been fantastic, and can't wait to share this with our viewers and yours as well. So
fantastic.
And the troopers of especially, I've been in year 21 now and started out Medora PD. So awesome. Obviously I relied a lot on the troopers there, getting myself into stuff I probably shouldn't have. And there's Will Vance showing up to help me out, Roger Clemens, some of the OGs, and Danny too. So, but it's always you start working with professionals, either at our department or other departments, and you guys, like I said, at the trooper level, all the programs you guys are doing and the professionalism that you're exhibiting on behalf of North Dakota, it just makes us want to stick with this profession and keep doing good by the citizens of North Dakota. So keep up doing what you're doing, and thank you again for coming in.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well said.